Welcome to Stay in the Fight, a podcast by and for American veterans. I'm your host, David, and the intent for these episodes is to talk to veterans from all walks and to share their stories without a script or agenda. I'll be talking to men and women across all branches and jobs, from the Korean War era through the Global War on Terror era. We'll cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of war, service, and transition, with a focus on what it takes to stay in the fight. Hello and welcome to the Stay in the Fight podcast, sharing stories of American service members. I'm your host, David, and today we're joined by Steve Bohn, an Army veteran and Purple Heart recipient, currently the District Director for the Eastern Essex Department of Veteran Services. We're going to hear about his Purple Heart story and what he's doing for the community now. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, David.
Can we start off by just having you introduce yourself and tell us where you've been and what you're doing now?
So my name is retired Army Specialist Steve Bohn. I was born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts. Yes, where the witches, witch trials, and all that. That's what it's mostly famous for. It was a fun place to grow up. Obviously, a lot of history. We have someone buried that was on the Mayflower on the ship. So I mean, there's a lot of history in our area. I was a chef growing up. I loved to cook. That was a passion of mine. So I became a chef. In 2006, a friend of mine from Swampscott, Massachusetts, he was in the Army. He was in the tank. He was in the cavalry. He was injured he was killed by an IED in Iraq in 2006. And I quit my job after his funeral. That just, triggered. I don't want to say I wanted revenge, but I mean, I did. I was 19 years old. So I joined the military right after that. They wanted me to be a mechanical engineer. I ended up going infantry. So that goes to show you my intention. I wanted to be part of something that was bigger than myself, obviously. I feel like everyone should give back, whether it's in their community or serving their country. There's always ways of giving back to your country, not just military. But I deployed to Afghanistan in March 2008. Towards the end of our deployment, a suicide bomber in a dump truck drove up to our outpost, detonated. The building I was in collapsed on me, injured my spinal cord, my bladder. I got medevac to Landstuhl, Germany, and then after that, I ended up having to have spinal surgery at Walter Reed Army Hospital in 2008. That was during the scandal. I don't know if a lot of people remember the Walter Reed scandal or not. There was like mold in the ceilings. Yeah. So the original 08, 09, where there was mold in the ceilings, and I remember watching it all unfold on my TV screen in my hospital bed, and just looking up in the tiles, like looking for mold spores. So that was fun. I survived Walter Reed. That was good. But I always tell people, things happen for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. I get to help people now. I get to help veterans and their family members now, whether it's filing VA claims or state benefits that we have. We have a benefit called Chapter 115 here in Massachusetts, and that's been around since the Revolutionary War. So it provides financial and medical assistance to veterans, low-income veterans and their families. There's obviously financial eligibility, but it's not supposed to be a forever program. We're supposed to help with job searching for the veterans. We help them resume building, getting placements so that we can, get them to, a sustainable future and have ways of providing for their families. But we are here for, people that just need help, that veterans who are struggling have, whether they just got laid off from their job and need unemployment assistance. There's just so much that we can provide and help for, whether it's on the federal or the state side. But yeah, I mean, that's just been my path. I had to testify against the VA in 2011 on the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs hearing on the quote unquote seamless transition from DoD healthcare to the VA, and just how their systems don't really communicate. Um, I like to think that made a difference, but it's hard to say. You still see
When did
so
you do
many
that?
veterans. To May 2011.
Oh,
Yeah. So it was Senator Patty Murray. She was the chairwoman at the time. Richard Burr, he was the co-chairman. Um, but yeah, it was. So I think that's really where I got my passion for advocating for veterans and their families. After doing that, I've just seen so many people fall through the cracks, and I fell through the cracks. So who better trying to help other veterans and family members of someone who did fall through the cracks themselves. So it's a really big passion of mine. I feel like it's not work because they always say that corny line, you never work a day in your life if you love what you do, but it really is true. So
well, it's good to hear that there's some work for you. Uh,
yes.
hey, can you tell me about your? I'm obliged, right? I'm obligated to ask about the Purple Heart story. So I read something about you that said you were asleep when it happened.
So yeah, we were on a combat outpost. There was 28 of us on a small cop. We had guard duty, so we had three towers on our cop. So we had two squads pretty much. We split up. First squad would stay behind and watch the guard man the towers, and one squad would go out and do missions. So I was lucky enough to have to do guard duty for 8 hours. And then my PL was like, hey, get a few hours of shut eye because we're going on a mission in a few hours. So I was like,
Mhm.
wow. So I try to get, I think I was asleep maybe 15, 20 minutes. I don't recall, obviously. But I just remember, bits and pieces, people slapping me in the face, pulling me out from the wall. And yeah, I think being on the medevac was, got a little bits of memories of that. But yeah, I mean, it was a trip.
What part of Afghanistan were you in?
Wardak province, we were in Syedabad. So we were right off Highway 1. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful.
Yes.
So then you went back to Landstuhl. You got to Walter Reed, and you said just a minute ago you had kind of fallen through the cracks. What does falling through the cracks look like for you?
So I mean, I was medevaced back to Fort Campbell when I was supposed to actually be flown to Walter Reed first. So there was just a little miscommunication there. So after I got back to Fort Campbell to Rear D, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And that's when warrior transition units were still in their infancy stage. So
Mhm.
WTUs were still, pilot programs. When they realized the mistake, they're like, "Why are you actually here?" They flew
Yeah.
me back to Walter Reed, where I actually ended up having my surgery. I was designated to a warrior transition unit there at Walter Reed and Fort Meade, which was like 40 minutes away. But yeah, the warrior transition units were very, like I said, they were new, so there was just a lot of complications with them. Yeah, which still are, I believe.
Was there some idea that you were gonna, I guess, for lack of a better term, return to duty? Like,
No,
no.
so my neurosurgeons pretty much told me, you're done. You can't be infantry anymore. And I knew lying in the hospital, like I think after my bladder reconstructive surgery, I was like, I'm done. This is
No.
looking down and seeing 50 staples in my stomach. I'm like, yeah, there's no way I can, get back in this.
Were you married at the time or
Negative.
single?
I was single. Yeah, luckily. I mean, I went to the mentality. I really like. I don't know. For me, I was like, it was kind of selfish to bring. I didn't want to get into a relationship and to have them have to worry about me. I guess. Plus, like I said, I was young. I was 20
Yeah,
years old when I deployed. So didn't
sure.
have my first legal drink till I was 22. So after
I
being in
mean,
the hospitals.
right. I mean, what I'm hearing is that you were basically were you alone at the hospital? I mean, your unit's still
Yeah.
deployed. You're not married, no kids. You had family come down from Boston or
So that was an issue. So I grew up poor. My family didn't have a lot of money. So having them they didn't have money to pay for airfare. They didn't have, any of that. So they had to rent a car to drive down. My dad, he actually drove the whole way straight. um, But yeah, that was tough. I mean, you'd think that the military would, yeah, your family member's injured. Like here's a plane ride and a free ride to his hotel. None of that. So
What about
that
the
was challenging. Laying in the hospital bed for over a month at a time. I was feeling alone was really hard. Yeah.
when did you get to Walter Reed?
So I got to Walter Reed first after launch school, and then that's when I was at Andrews Air Force Base. They're like, oh, and they flew me to Fort Campbell because that's where my unit was, and then that's where at Campbell they're like, whoa, what are you doing here? They flew me back to Andrews, and then they brought me in an ambulance from Andrews to Walter Reed. But yeah, it was a clusterfuck.
How long were you in the hospital though? Like I'm saying, like when you got to launch, or excuse me, when you got to Walter Reed, when did you actually get to walk out?
Us, well, off and on. So, like I said, we were at a warrior transition unit. There's an ambulatory. So after my surgeries, I went to the warrior transition unit, which was the ambulatory warrior transition unit. Um, but I would have to go back to Walter Reed for like appointments, which was an
Mhm.
hour away. So they would have a bus pick us up at Fort Meade and take us to our doctor's appointments an hour away at Walter Reed. But yeah, we were at a warrior transition unit at Fort Meade.
What was the what would you say was the hardest part of recovery?
Going through the med board process, like I said, your family is 1,000 miles away, and you have nobody there. This isn't your unit. Like you have no support group at all. I remember I was like, oh, like if I got a ride for the weekend just to go home, like for 72 hours and then have to come all the way back to Maryland, like it was really tough being alone and not having a support group. But like I said, that's when warrior transition units were still in the infancy stage. They didn't really have SOPs on how to do it. Most of the cadre in warrior transition units were injured warriors themselves waiting for their
Right.
med board. So it was very weird, the whole structure and setup. Yeah.
So you got hit by a dump truck VBIED and spent months in the hospital, and the hardest part was not having like a support group there, not having a team.
Yeah. I mean,
Not
everything going
surgeries,
through it. Yeah. Yeah. I
not
mean,
surgeries,
going
not like physical therapy, not any of that. It
like
was
that.
it was
No.
having no one to advocate for you and kind of being shuffled through the med board process.
Feeling alone, honestly, is the worst feeling anyone can go
Do you
through. I
still hear
feel,
that from dudes
especially.
that come see you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But that's why we're here. We can be their voice for veterans that feel like they don't have a voice. Whether it's on the local level, like here in Ipswich, we just passed. Well, in Massachusetts, the HERO Act just passed, so that doubled property tax exemptions for disabled veterans.
Mhm.
But they left it up to the cities and towns, so it's not mandatory. So me being in charge of 6 towns, now I have to go to each town and have them, hey, let's get this adopted. Let's double the property tax exemptions for 100% veterans, and it ties to the cost of living, which is nice too. So their property tax exemption will just, you know, over time it'll tie to inflation. It'll benefit
Right.
them. But the annuity we just raised. So if you're a 100% disabled veteran in Massachusetts, you get a $2,000 tax-free annuity just for being 100%. But we just raised that to 2,500. So we split it up into two $1,250 payments a year. So yeah, we just raised that for events. There's just so many things that we're trying to do for the veteran community and families, because obviously families serve just as much in my opinion. Um, so trying to do job training for military spouses, for their children. We're trying to develop a lot of new ways to keep the military community engaged, because we have some military bases here in Massachusetts, like we have Hanscom Air Force Base, Fort Devens, which is more training for National Guard and stuff. But we don't have like a huge active duty military base that the community can rally around, I guess. Like at Fort Campbell, we had Clarksville, Tennessee, huge military supportive town. They're very supportive. We just don't really have that in Massachusetts. So trying to get our communities engaged and see the challenges that veterans face coming home, whether it's readjusting to civilian life, getting job placement, just having someone understand you. So that's what VSOs, we're the front lines for the veterans coming home, for filing claims with the VA, because obviously the claim process is not not user friendly. The
Yeah.
applications are very confusing. So I just got accredited, so I'm a National Veteran Service Officer. So I'm accredited with the Vietnam Veterans of America and Veteran Voice of America. Um, I'm doing this training because I want to serve you to the best of my ability and serve your family to the best of my ability. So that's really what it's about. It's not about you. I always tell people, it's regardless of your story, what you did in the military. So you got to put that aside and focus on, veterans, because not every veteran got blown up. Not every veteran is going to be 100%. They're not going to be qualified for certain things, but you got to fight your ass off for the veterans in your community.
And you said you started fighting your ass off when? It was like 2011 you went and testified in front of Congress?
Yeah, in front of the Senate committee. Yeah,
Senate committee, excuse me.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. How did you get picked for that? Or how did you land in that situation?
So Wounded Warrior Project, I was part of their national campaign team for a while. So I did a lot of the media, um, engagement, trying to get the communities to, understand what Wounded Warrior Project was. So they obviously had a huge part on DC. They have a team on the Hill, and they invited me. They heard my story and how I was, just living on my retirement pay, waiting for my VA pay, claim to go through, and I was getting $700 for my retirement pay through the military while I was waiting for my VA to go through, and that $700 was going to my 1 bedroom a month apartment. So I
Where were you
had
living?
no money for food. I had no money to pay any other bills. Um, so they were like, "Hey, we think you're going to be a perfect candidate to come and share your story against to the Senate." And I was very honored to do so. Sure, I mean, obviously, it's such a personal story. To share that in a public forum was hard, but like I said, I like to think it did help in the long run. It's not about you anymore. It's about trying to help out the next generation.
That was a while ago too. What were they asking you? Or what I guess what was the message you guys and Wounded Warrior Project were trying to convey to the Senate?
Just how hard it is, how the systems don't communicate, DoD and the VA. Like they're supposed to send your records when you're ETS, like 160 days prior to your ETSing, so that the VA can start on your paperwork and all of that. But just like I said, a lot of people fall through the cracks. That doesn't happen. So it really puts a blanket, especially their systems do not communicate. The VA software, honestly, it's from the 80s still. A lot of people don't realize that. Like
It's
it
still
costs so
today in
much money.
2024?
Yeah, there are softwares from like 1980s, but it would just cost so much money to revamp it. But anyway, their systems are just like I said. It's in my opinion, they're not user friendly. But yeah, that's why a lot of communities have veteran service officers to help and who are trained there to help the new generation come home, men and women.
Do you think since you've testified, not necessarily because you've testified, but maybe certainly you were part of that, but has stuff changed? Has this improved?
So yeah, so I didn't have a federal recovery case manager when I was supposed to. They said that was one of the big problems that I fell through the cracks. So a federal recovery care coordinator is supposed to do what they do. They help coordinate with your family while you're injured. Help with the process. That lack of having a federal recovery coordinator was part of the huge issues of the challenges I faced. Paperwork not being filed. All that, but do I like to think it improved? Yeah. Is there room for improvement? Yeah, of course. There's room for improvement anywhere. But yeah, I don't want to say that my testimony was for nothing. I really do believe it did help future, people when they kept coming home, because like I said, it was 2011, the wars were still going on. So yeah, I like to think it did help.
I guess it's probably naive to think that things move super quick, but I don't know. It just feels like 15 years. we wouldn't have these problems anymore. Like all my peers, all my buddies that are getting out, whether it's ETS, retire, or whatever, they're all kind of reaching back to me. I'm still in, right, and they're telling me, hey, X X X X Y Z, all these things you got to start doing now, because afterwards it just gets 10 times harder. Nobody's talking to this guy. It's like dragging yourself through barbed wire. um I was like, by the time I retire, by the time I get out, it won't be a problem. But I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
reach out to someone like you, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I've helped people getting their retirement pay through their whatever respective branches that it was, all because of maybe some S1 didn't sign the right form, or so there's always something. Honestly, there's always something, whether it's in the active duty world or it's in the veteran side, which VA or state. Um, but yeah, you definitely need to know somebody who knows what they're doing, because paperwork can just get lost or not filed. I've seen that paperwork just not get filed at all. So it's humbling to be able to do what I do.
I don't know if you've seen it or paid attention at all. I guess there's some, like, I don't know if it's just strictly media or if there's actually anything going on, um, in terms of trying to maybe deflate some of the benefits veterans receive as a way to, you know, make back some of the deficit. Have you at your level heard anything about changes for veteran benefits coming down, or not that
I
that's
have
go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I have not. I mean, I've heard about the speculation, but I'm more of a person. I hate speculating until I see things actually falling out, and let things play out until we need to advocate. Until I don't see that happening. That's my opinion.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's good to hear. Steve, you were also a veteran liaison, right, for a congressman? I think Seth
Yeah.
Moulton.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that too?
So my friend is a veteran service officer for Salem, my hometown, and I moved back from Connecticut, uh, moved back to my hometown, and obviously I was looking for a job, and he told me, hey, Congressman Moulton, he's a Marine Corps veteran of Iraq War. He needed a new veterans liaison, and it's right up my alley. Advocating, against the VA. I was like, sign me up. But yeah, it's being in charge of six. So yeah, Congressman Molly is District 6. So we had the whole 6th district of Massachusetts. So I made up a lot of towns, and I would get calls from all. I mean, it was a lot of calls on whether veterans losing their benefits for. Because a lot of people don't know. So if a veteran gets incarcerated, um, they get knocked down to 10%. Regardless if you're 100%, you get incarcerated. Boom, you're getting knocked down 10%. But sometimes Department of Corrections and the don't communicate with the VA, so the VA still pays you, and you're racking up debt. Actually, you
Mm,
don't know this. You're in prison racking up debt. So then when you get out, you get this letter saying, "Hey, you owe us, $50,000 because this happened out of your control or whatever."
right.
So then I would have to call and have to advocate with the VA. So I was pretty much, the middleman. We had congressional liaisons with every federal agency, which was nice. So if a veteran was having problems with the VA, I knew who to contact. But there's always National Personnel Records Center trying to get records, emergency DD 214s for veterans who suddenly passed away and needed to prove their veteran status for the funeral home to have a burial. So we'd have to, it was a lot, but I I love that stuff. I mean, it sounds weird, because at the end of the day, you're helping,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
making a difference in another veteran or widow's life. So
What is it? I guess, how receptive do you feel? Obviously, maybe it wasn't inclusive. Maybe it wasn't indicative of all congressmen, right? But in terms of working with him, Seth, um, Did you get the sense that veterans have an actual voice or someone listening to them? There's a lot of lip service. I mean, what does it look like once you're behind that curtain and you're kind of working with them?
Well, so obviously Seth, he's a combat veteran himself. He's been very open about his struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder, which I respected, especially coming from a congressman, because that could be political suicide right then and there. I don't necessarily agree with all of his views. I mean, and I don't agree with, you don't have to agree with everybody's views, to get along. And you're all trying to do the same job here. And my job was not politics. And I told him this when I started, that's your job. My job is helping the veterans in our district and serve them to the best of my ability. But a lot of things that he did and a lot of bills that he put forth with respect to veterans, yeah, he did a lot for veterans in the veteran community. Do I believe he cares for the veteran community? 100%. Yeah, his bills. We had this nonprofit organization in Danvers, Massachusetts called Operation Troop Support. Good friends of mine, they actually sent me care packages when I was in Afghanistan, which was amazing. We got mail once a month on our cop. So, I mean, it was amazing to get, just
That's
something from home. Yeah. Oh yeah. So they're over 20 years of them sending out care packages. They've spent over $20 million in postage. And for a nonprofit, that's a lot. So with the postage going up, they were charging more, regardless if you were a nonprofit sending packages to AOs or troops overseas. There was still a flat rate package. So we put forth, we actually had them sign on as a co-sponsor of a bill, the Care Packages for Our Heroes Act, which would help organizations like Operation Troop Support have a flat fee to send overseas, so it'd be a lot cheaper. Because it's little things like that where something as small as a postage fee. It's hurting small organizations that are trying to send care packages to our troops. So I mean, like small things like that. I was very honored to be a small part of it. Yeah.
What are you working on now?
Me? Oh wow!
Yeah.
So like I said, the HERO Act just passed in Massachusetts. A lot of things change. It's the most comprehensive veterans bill to pass in the state. Every community, I have 6 towns now, so like I said, so I have to go around now to every assessor's office in my 6 communities to try to have the town adopt these clauses where it would double the property tax exemptions for certain veterans and their families, and also tie it to the cost of living. So working on that. We just got all of our towns designated as Purple Heart friendly communities. So what that means, it's through the Purple Heart Trail, so that we get the towns to recognize them as a Purple Heart friendly community. We hang, every August, so we have a Purple Heart Day. We hold a ceremony at the flagpole with the Purple Heart flag, read the proclamation on what Purple Heart Day entails, what it means. So I was very honored as being a Purple Heart recipient to, have all my communities recognized as Purple Heart communities. That was a very big, important mission on my end. But the job never ends. There's always going to be something that we can improve on. There's always going to be that next bill. There's always going to be, but you can't always. As much as we want to help, it sucks saying no. And that's the hardest part of my job, honestly, is saying, oh, you make too much money for, eligibility for VA, or you didn't serve in a certain area, you're not entitled to the PACT Act, or, that's the hardest part, honestly.
Can you give me a little bit more detail on the PACT Act?
Oh, so the PACT Act, it opened up eligibility to a whole wide of veterans now. So, there's a lot of presumptive conditions that were added. So a lot of cancers, hypertension was just added. So there's just so much out there, presumptive new conditions being added to the presumptive list. But if you're exposed to toxic exposures, Agent Orange, burn pits, any toxic exposures really, and you have a presumptive condition, that's just telling you don't have to fight the VA to say, hey, this is due to service. They're already recognizing it, saying it's a presumptive condition under the PACT Act. We're going to give you a service connection for it. So that part makes my job easier, is when it's presumptive. But when it's trying to prove, well, I hate to say it, a lot of these veterans were stubborn back then coming home. So now my job is when they're so now when they're 90 years old, they're like, oh, I'm going to put in for this. I'm like, sir, I love you. I'm going to put it in for it, but you should have did this 40 years ago. But so trying to prove service connection from things that happened 40, 50 years ago, that's a challenge for me. Trying to track down records from the National Personnel Records Center from 40, 50 years ago. A lot of people don't know this as well. There was a big fire at the National Personnel Records Center in 1973. So a lot of records burned up. So what they're doing now is they're generating, just auto letters saying, hey, this person served from this time to this time, just to give the VA to prove service. But yeah, it's never a dull moment in a veteran service office. I'll tell you that. And if anyone wants to go volunteer in one, you'll see what I'm talking about.
I guess, you probably got out of the Army not on your own terms, right? You probably struggled with that personally. Are you able to connect with veterans that are kind of getting out on their own terms or not on their own terms? And what's kind of like what's the main thing that you're talking to dudes about how are they having problems transitioning?
I think it's finding that purpose. For me personally, I knew that's what it was. You were in charge of $1 million equipment, in charge of lives, and then to come home and be like, all right, what am I, like, bag groceries? Like, just trying to have that sense of I went from high strung environment, people's lives are on the line, to, oh, should I put this egg carton or like, should I put this milk in this bag? Like, it was a trip trying to find that purpose again. And like I said, I found my purpose helping other veterans, just lying in the hospitals and just testifying, seeing the other people testifying alongside of me. They had this guy with his leg blown off and they had him on temporary disability. So knowing me, and Patrick knows this, I'm a smart ass. So off script, I asked them, I was like, so you expect his leg to grow back? And that, yeah. But right after that, they came up actually with both of our ratings, the VA, and was like, here's your 100% to both of us. But
you go, smart ass.
I am. I mean, I have no tolerance for stupidity, I guess, and when it's just so blatant. So yeah, I will call. I just call things out for how they are, I believe. If I see a wrong, I'm going to call it out and try to, make it right. I've been to numerous Board of Veteran Appeals hearings with the VA, trying to get a veteran just a hearing rating. So yeah, it's important work. I always say, this is someone's mortgage payment. Like, this rating could be someone's heat bill for the month, someone's food bill for the month. So you never know someone's situation. Something that could be a couple $100s to something so much to someone else. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've heard purpose being like the number one thing that dudes struggle with when they get out, from multiple people. Do you have any? I mean, how did you find purpose on the outside?
So I struggled for a while. I was drinking myself to death. I'd go home, pound a bottle of Jack to my face. After a while, I was just like, there's no way to live.
Yeah.
I was ashamed. I was depressed, survivor's guilt. It was a struggle. And like I said, I didn't want to get help because I was ashamed. And then finally, my buddy grabbed me. She's like, I don't want to bury you. That was a wake-up call.
Was a buddy?
yeah, one of my other veteran buddies. So I started going to the VA. I started talking. Yeah, and he was a younger vet coming home, so I was helping him out. And for him to like say that to me, it was like, oh, I'm supposed to be the one showing you. Uh, but yeah, he was the best man at my wedding. Still, great friend of mine. Even though he was second ID, but whatever. But yeah, it was. You have to battle your demons first, I believe, and you have to fix yourself before you can help anyone else. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously, I still struggle with survivor's guilt. I'm always going to, but developing those coping mechanisms, those healthy coping mechanisms, is going to make the difference on other people's lives. Like I said, it's not just about you. And that's the way I look at it. I can't help anyone else if I'm not helping myself first. So
And you
yeah,
pay it
that was a
forward.
huge wake up call. Yeah.
You pay it forward now. Do you reach out to buddies that are struggling? Do you kind of give them that
Oh
wake?
yeah. Oh yeah. I know the signs because I went. Um, Staying at home, isolating. If I know that, like, hey, come fishing, and they're like, oh no, I don't want to. Like, hey, I know you love fishing, so something's up. Like,
Yeah.
you know the things to look out for, and know the things to ask. You don't want to push too much because you don't want to push people away, but you also want them to know, like, hey, I'm here if you need to talk. I'm here if any day, night, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's probably important to have somebody to get in your shit sometimes. Say, hey man,
Yeah.
this isn't good. This is going nowhere fast. I know the veteran community is big on, hey, call your buddy. That's like kind of the fix for everything. You see a bunch of people kind of throwing that idea around all the time. And a lot of times it's easy to dismiss that, I think, as like a kind of the easy button. Like, hey, if I just call my buddy, I did, I fulfilled my responsibility. That's it. But I think it's a lot of times the quality of the conversation you have with that buddy that matters. Anyone can call their homie, hey, how you doing? Yeah, how's the fam? Business going well, job going good. Great, man. I'll call you next year. Have a good one. Even if something's up, calling them and kind of coddling them sometimes isn't the best approach. Personally, I think the best approach is just calling it out, like grabbing you, shaking you, right? And be like, hey man, this isn't fucking good. Right? Like you got to pull your head out of your ass. There's people depending on you. Um, you're part of a community. We want you. We love you.
Yeah.
Let's find you some help. Let's find you some purpose again. I think purpose being, you're right. You can throw all the accolades in there. $15 million worth of equipment, led a platoon of X amount of dudes to the mountains of Afghanistan, we're doing some big stuff like on the daily. It starts to feel mundane a lot of the times. But you pull that rug out from underneath a lot of dudes and there's nothing left. Whether it's, even if it's just job security, what would you call it? Being happy with your job. I'm already forgetting that term. I don't know why. Satisfaction, job satisfaction. You take that little thing away from a guy, and a lot of times they're struggling, and it's so easy from the outside. I think want to grab them by the shoulder and kind of push them in a direction, and be like, go over there. Like, I know you have skills, you have talent, you're passionate about these things. Go this direction. And a lot of dudes just don't want to have that conflict with a buddy. They're too timid, or they're too, they just don't want that confrontation. But I think
they're guys.
Yeah, they're guys. They're like, well, I don't know.
Emotions.
Like,
We don't want to talk about
I
it.
don't want to deal with that, man. Like, I'd rather just kind of like, oh, that's cool, man. Like, well, we should go grab a beer sometime later. Um, Anyways, I've several buddies that have gotten out and been very successful. The best quality conversations are the ones where like you're able to kind of shoot it straight. Hey, man, I think you could do better. Doesn't mean I'm going to be an asshole to you. Um, it doesn't mean I think you're doing bad. I just think like I know you. I know your potential. I know what you're passionate about. I know your skill set. I know what we used to do. I think you can do more than sit on Fort Couch. I think you can do more than drinking a bottle of booze every night. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. I think a lot of times dudes have trouble transitioning into realizing that at the very least, their priority can completely shift and be their family now. I know when it happened to you, you weren't married at the time. But I know plenty of dudes that are married, and you know them too, right? Married with kids by the time they even hit their first deployment. They get wounded, they ETS, they retire, they get med boarded, whatever it is. And I'm like, hey, dude, there's your mission right there. Like that's your priority right now. Make sure you're a good father. Make sure you're a good husband, and stop drowning yourself in booze. Stop. I'll just call them unhealthy coping mechanisms. Right? There's plenty of them. I'm not going to list them out. And sometimes it just takes a phone call or maybe a visit. Hey, man, you need to get right. Sort yourself out. Anyway, so I didn't mean to interject too long there. I just wanted to make it clear. Sometimes the quality of the conversation is more important than just calling somebody sometimes. So I'm glad your buddy was able to pull your head out.
Yeah, not beating around the bush. It's like, hey, let's do some course correction here. It's yeah, like I said, like I said, no one's going to ever be healed from post-traumatic stress. I'm sorry. Like you're always going to have those lingering effects, but it's like I said, it's about developing how can I, those healthy mechanisms of how can I get past this, whatever anxiety issue I'm having right now, or, bad memory of, an incident that happened, in the war. It's, calling up some like, hey, a buddy, like you said, it's something so simple and just being open and honest about it, I believe, is the hardest part for some people. Because yeah, it's like I said, that stigma and that shame that still lingers. They didn't know what post-traumatic stress disorder was, and it wasn't even until the 80s. The 80s, they didn't really know what it was diagnosed. They call it shell shock or battle fatigue back then. So they didn't actually have treatment plans for all of this back in the day.
Well, they did. It was General Patton. General
Oh,
Patton
yes.
slap you around. You're treated. You're healed. Get back out there.
We're actually lucky enough to have Patton Farm not even 15 minutes away where he
Oh,
lives.
really?
So yeah. I actually, his grandson Ben wrote a book called Grown Up Patton. He's a great friend of mine. He started actually, so he was the only Patton that didn't join the military, so he's always had that like kind of guilt. So he's a storyteller. Yeah, but he's a storyteller. So his dad was Vietnam Patton. So he started this video program where he would get combat veterans out. It was called I Was There Film Workshop, where he started this film workshop where he got combat vets together to storytell through video, by creating a video and expressing, how you feel. It was a great video workshop, by the Patton homestead. So a lot of history here. But yeah, it was an honor to actually go to his farm and, see a lot of the memorabilia from just not World War II Patton, but, Vietnam Patton, which a lot of people don't realize, there was a
I've never even heard of Vietnam Patton.
Oh yeah, he was, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, so he's Growing Up Patton. It's a good book. Ben Patton.
So now you're married. How is I guess how is having a spouse, a companion, a buddy, a friend, all the things? How has that support network kind of changed the trajectory of your recovery, or I guess of your life?
So she's actually my work. She's a nurse. So she's a NICU nurse. She works premature babies in Boston. So she's a nurturer type, obviously. So all these surgeries that I've had to go through, she's the one that's like, because I have to get a lot of bad gross testing due to my bladder reconstructive. I don't want to get into it, but I have to get a lot of things shoved up me, cameras and all of that. So she forces me to actually go to these appointments now. But like, before I'd be like, fuck off, I'm not going to do that. Like, but once again, it's not about me anymore. So I gotta, just suck it up and, stick around for my wife and my child. So as painful and embarrassing and degrading as the tests are.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to stay in the fight for the family, right?
Amen, brother. Amen. But no, she's my rock, and once again, it sounds corny, but no, she's my best friend. Yeah.
Not corny at all, man. That's just an armyism, right? Everyone wants to, kind of does that, like, it's my wife. Yeah, no big deal. But
The old ball
yeah,
and chain.
yeah, that's your core relationship. I wish dudes would understand how much more important a wife, a spouse is, right? I don't want to talk in just for dudes, but like,
Not a stripper for E1s. That they
yeah,
just met.
yeah, quality, right? Quality first. But having someone that you're married to, that's kind of your core relationship outside of the military, is so important. Um, we talk about support network, we talk about support back home, and a lot of times it's kind of like a nebulous term. Um, I know in the Army, a lot of times dudes are just unwilling to admit that there's something more important than the Army, right? Like, hey, you're going to hang it up eventually. If you were, to die in a car crash tomorrow, if there's going to be someone to step in and fill your position that same day. Um, Not to say you're worthless, but it's just to keep perspective on, like, hey, there's much bigger things, much more important things. Purpose is still there, whether or not you're wearing the uniform, whether or not you're active duty, and even while you're in, like, having someone there to kind of come home to, talk about your day. Um, they can course correct too, because a lot of times, you're gonna come home, you're gonna want like a little echo chamber. Babe, let me tell you, my day was this fucked up. And this guy did this, and this guy did this, and can you believe this? And sometimes it's important to have someone to be like, yeah, that's crazy. It's not great. And then it's good to have someone be like, would you pull your head out of your ass? Like, come on, get back in there, do this, do that, suck it up, go to your appointments, right? We got kids, we got mouths to feed, we got bills to pay, but more importantly, like, um, if you can manage that responsibility and kind of navigate the military world, um, you're going to be able to figure out other things too, which I guess is a clunky way of saying, like, if you're good at one thing, you can be good at multiple things. Being a dad's one of them. Being a husband's one of them. And a lot of times dudes just give up completely, right? The dudes that are on their third marriage or something like that, and I think it's like kind of cool. Um, Instead of using it as like a learning, oh yeah, like I kind of messed that up. It's always, wow, I married married the stripper. I married, the girl from back home that I met for 2 weeks on block leave. And the divorce is completely her fault, and she took everything from me. I think a lot of times being able to kind of assign yourself accountability for your part in relationships in the military and outside of the military is important. I guess that's what I was trying to say. So when you see a buddy struggling, it's kind of your job. It's your responsibility to go over there and help them out. The same way it's your job to do that for your spouse, and your spouse for you when you come home from work and you're struggling, or when you're about to go to an invasive procedure and you don't want to. She's there to say, hey, not John, let's go.
Yeah, no, exactly. But also you can lead a horse to water kind of thing, but I do this all the time. You can't make someone do something, especially, on my end when I'm like, hey, I've got all this paperwork filled out for you. I'm going to send it to you. All you have to do is sign it to me by this day. And this dealing with Joe's, sometimes, I forgot it's a day later, it's like, come on, like, as much as you want and you can guide them to do the right thing, unfortunately, it's out of your hands, and you have to understand that's okay. Like, it's okay for that to happen, like, because you're doing everything you can on your power. Control what you can control, kind of thing. But with me, I mean, that's kind of hard because I like to control everything. But yeah, I mean, just it's a struggle sometimes when you're trying. Like, what this person has to do, the right course that they have to take, and you just see them taking the exact opposite course, and it wants to drive you fucking crazy sometimes. But at the end of the day, when you get home, you're like, all right, it's out of my hands. Like this, they're gonna do what they're gonna do at the end of the day, you know. Whether it's, oh, we're gonna have to do another safety fucking brief, or you know. So I
You'll never
mean,
be
yeah,
done with those. You'll never be done.
yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can only do what you can do at the end of the day. But you also want to inspire other people. You know, you want other people to. I always say, like someone on the outside, that they're going to tell how much you care in your position and what you do by your actions. So yeah, I mean, trying and doing the best of your ability, it's going to pay off, not just in what you're doing, but you know, someone else is seeing that on the outside, like, oh shit, you know, I can do this too. But yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, I kind of want to ask you one last question. If you had if you had some advice for younger you, or maybe even just more broadly speaking, younger service members, um, something you wish you knew when you were their age, what would it be?
Keep all of your medical records. Keep everything. No. Just wow.
Anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be
Enjoy.
service related. It could be
Yeah.
anything.
No, just enjoy the time that you have. Ref- Learn from your mistakes. I always say they're not mistakes unless you learn from them. So if you're keep doing the same thing over and over, which is the definition of insanity, expecting different results, then you know obviously you need to do some course correction. But yeah, just you're never done learning. Continue, ask questions. Yeah, there's no stupid questions in life.
Awesome. So be humble enough to learn from anybody.
Cool.
Hmm. That's a tough one for most dudes, I think.
Yeah.
I think I have just in passing conversations with dudes or people in the community, church, uh, wherever, right? And it always feels like every person I talk to must be the smartest person in the room. Because man, I'll tell you, they tell you things with such confidence. Um, they just know everything about everything, and you're wrong about everything. And I'm like, I'm always kind of like surprised by the idea that no one has the idea that they could learn from somebody else in the room. That's probably kind of a military thing too. Ego plays a lot into it, right?
Well, it's just I think listening more, and I think listening is probably the best trait anyone can have. That's my opinion. Um, yeah, you're never done learning. Like I don't care who you are. Like they always say, you can't teach a dog new tricks. Bullshit. Bullshit. I'm teaching 90-year-olds new things every day. I mean, and they
Great.
love it. Having these guys come in for veterans coffees, and getting that camaraderie back, from these guys who haven't been in the service in years. I mean, it's just so powerful to see from my angle. Yeah.
That's good.
Corny again, I know.
No, no, man. Good. Good. Steve, hey man, we're gonna wrap it up. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No,
We'll drop some contact information in the episode description, and that way dudes can reach out to you. Maybe you can point them in the right direction. Do you have contacts outside of Massachusetts? Like, if there's someone that reaches out to you, can you point them to their specific state equivalent of you?
so actually, I'm a National Veteran Service Officer, so I can file claims for anyone in the country. It doesn't specify it to Massachusetts, which is nice.
All right, Steve. You got any final words?
No, I sincerely, appreciate you having me on. It's definitely a learning experience with me. Can't believe I cried, but
Totally fine, man. You know it. I know it. We all know it,
yeah, yeah.
brother. Steve, it's been good.